The quiet hallway. It was almost 3 a.m. when Mia stepped out of room 214. Her shoes made soft taps against the polished hospital floor. The night shift was dragging longer than usual. Two patients had coded back to back. The elevator was malfunctioning again, and one of the interns accidentally spilled coffee all over the nurse station computer. But none of that compared to the deep ache in her legs and the heavy pressure in her chest. Not from stress, but from the sight of a young boy she had just helped move into intensive care. His mother had begged her with trembling hands, and Mia had held back tears as she whispered, "I'll do everything I can." Now she stood at the far end of the hallway, needing a second to breathe. The vending machine light flickered behind her. She leaned on the wall and rubbed her eyes. Most of the hospital was asleep or pretending to be. She was used to it being invisible, being background to everyone else's emergencies. Nurses were trained to be the calm in the storm, the ones who catch everyone else when they fall. But sometimes they just needed a moment to fall themselves. That was when she saw him. A man was slumped on the plastic waiting room bench, head tilted to the side, arms folded across his chest like he was trying to protect himself from the cold. His jacket was thin, and his hands were bare. Mia's first thought was, he must be waiting for someone, maybe a friend, a relative, someone in surgery or in pain. His face was peaceful, almost too peaceful for someone in a hospital waiting area. She walked closer and paused. She knew that face. Everyone knew that face. Keanu Reeves. The actor, the star of so many films, John Wick, The Matrix, the gentle soul people whispered about in stories online. But here he was, curled up like a lonely traveler with nowhere to go, no cameras, no entourage, no bodyguard. Just a man, quietly sleeping, like he hadn't in days. Mia looked around. No one else seemed to notice him. The front desk clerk had gone for coffee. The security guard was checking the emergency exit on the 3rd floor. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly reached for her jacket. It wasn't much, a navy blue fleece she kept in her locker for cold nights, but it was warm. And right now, he looked like he needed warmth more than she did. Gently, with the kind of care she usually reserved for patients in recovery, Mia placed her jacket over him. She made sure it covered his shoulders. She didn't want him to wake up. She didn't want him to feel watched. She just wanted him to be okay. But before she could walk away, he stirred. His eyes opened. For a second, they were glassy and unfocused, like he wasn't sure where he was. But then they met hers. He blinked, sat up slightly, looked at the jacket, then back at her. "Thank you," he whispered, voice raspy and raw. Mia smiled politely. "You looked cold." He sat up straighter, now trying to adjust himself. "I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was just waiting." His voice trailed off. He looked tired. Not movie star tired, but soul tired. The kind you don't fix with sleep. "Are you all right?" Mia asked softly. He nodded, then paused. "My sister. She's in the ICU. She collapsed this morning. No one could explain it. We flew in from out of town. They're running tests." Mia's eyes softened. "I'm sorry. I really hope she gets better." Keanu ran a hand through his messy hair. "I didn't know where else to go. I didn't want to leave. I thought maybe if I stayed close, she'd feel it. Like I'm with her." Mia didn't say anything for a second. Then, without thinking, she sat down beside him. They sat in silence, surrounded by the low hum of machines and the occasional beep from down the hallway. "It's hard," she said finally, "watching someone you love suffer and feeling completely helpless." He looked at her, surprised, not because of her words, but the way she said them. "My father," she continued. "He passed here last year. Same floor, same hallway. I remember waiting for hours, hoping just one nurse or one doctor would give me good news. They didn't. But I remember how one stranger left a blanket over my legs while I was asleep. I never forgot that." Keanu didn't speak, but she could see the shine in his eyes. "Sometimes," she whispered, "kindness from a stranger is the only thing keeping you together." He turned to her, not as a movie star, not as someone famous, but as a man in pain. "What's your name?" he asked. Double quotes Mia. Double quotes. He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mia. Really." Then, from the end of the hallway, The elevator belled dinged. One of the ICU nurses stepped out. Holding a clipboard, she looked around, then spotted him. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly. He stood up immediately. "Yes?" She walked over and offered a gentle smile. "Your sister's awake. She's asking for you." His face shifted. Relief, fear, joy, all wrapped in a tight breath. He glanced at Mia, like he didn't want to leave without saying something more. "Go," she said. "She needs you." He touched her jacket, still draped over his shoulders. "I'll bring this back." She smiled. "Don't worry about it." He paused. "I will. You have my word." Then he turned and walked toward the nurse, disappearing around the corner. Mia watched him go, then leaned back against the wall. She looked down at her arms, now bare and cold. But for some reason, she didn't feel cold anymore. She felt something else. A shift, like the night had just opened a door to something bigger, something that hadn't even begun. The return hours passed, the night slowly gave way to morning, and the hospital began to stir. Fluorescent lights flickered brighter. Carts rattled down hallways. The smell of fresh coffee returned to the air, and yet, Mia couldn't stop thinking about him. Keanu Reeves. The way he looked at her with quiet gratitude, the way his voice cracked when he spoke of his sister, and the way he promised to return her jacket. Part of her thought she'd never see him again. Promises were easy to make at 3 a.m., but harder to keep when life got busy. She was standing near the nurse's station when her shift supervisor called her name. "Mia, someone's here to see you." "Me," she frowned. Who? He didn't say, just come outside. Confused, Mia wiped her hands on her scrubs and made her way to the entrance. The morning light was still dim, painting the pavement a soft gray. And standing there, just beyond the automatic doors, was Keanu. He was holding her jacket in one hand and a small paper bag in the other. "You didn't have to come back," she said, surprised. "I said I would," he replied, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "I'm a man of my word." He handed her the jacket gently, like it was something valuable. "I had it cleaned." She laughed softly. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," he said, then held out the bag. "Also, this is for you." She opened it. Inside was a warm blueberry muffin and a tall cup of coffee with almond milk, just how she liked it. "How did you know?" "I asked around," he said, chuckling. "Turns out, nurses talk a lot, especially when you're nice to them." She shook her head, smiling. "You really didn't need to." He looked at her, more serious now. "Mia, last night, you didn't just give me your jacket. You gave me comfort. You didn't know me. And still, you were kind. I needed that more than I can explain." Mia felt something inside her soften. She had heard thank yous before, from patients, from families, even from the occasional doctor. But this felt different, like it came from someone who truly understood what it meant to receive something small in a moment that felt so big. "How's your sister?" she asked, her voice gentle. He smiled, eyes glowing. "Better, stable. The doctors think she'll make a full recovery." "That's wonderful." "Yeah, it is." They stood there in silence for a moment. The city behind them was waking up. Cars honked faintly in the distance. Birds chirped over the hum of morning traffic. Yet everything felt still between them. Then he spoke again. "I know this might sound strange, but can I ask you something?" Mia nodded slowly. "Do you have a break coming up?" She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I was hoping you'd sit with me for 10 minutes. Just to talk. No cameras, no autographs, just to people who've both seen hard nights." Her first instinct was to say no. Nurses didn't have time to sit, let alone with movie stars. But something in his face tired, human, real made her heart shift. "Okay," she said softly. 10 minutes. They found a quiet bench under a tree near the staff parking lot. Keanu took a sip of his coffee and let out a small sigh. "I've been coming to this hospital since last night," he began, "and not one person has treated me like I was anyone special. At first, I was annoyed. I thought, maybe they don't recognize me. But now, I'm glad they didn't." Mia tilted her head. "Why?" "Because for once, I wasn't an actor. I was just a man, a brother, scared, waiting. It reminded me of who I really am." She nodded. "Hospitals have a way of doing that." He glanced at her. Have you always wanted to be a nurse? Mia looked down at her coffee. No, not really. I wanted to be a writer once. I loved stories. But my mom got sick, and we couldn't afford long treatments. So I studied nursing, got scholarships, paid for her meds. She passed away 2 years ago. But I stayed. I guess I got used to saving other people, even when I couldn't save her. Keanu didn't speak right away. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small notebook. I keep this with me, he said. Whenever I hear something real, I write it down. He opened to a page and scribbled something, then closed the book again. What did you write? Mia asked, curious. He smiled. Just a line. She stayed to save others, even after losing the one she loved. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. You should write again, he said. Your story matters. Just then, her pager buzzed. I have to go, she said, standing up. Shift starting. Of course, he said, rising to. Thank you for sharing this moment. As she turned to leave, he called out one last thing. Mia. She turned back. I'm doing a charity event next month. For hospital staff and families. I'd love for you to come, not as a nurse, just as you. She stared at him, speechless. Think about it, he said gently. And if you decide to come, bring a story. He smiled, then walked away, leaving her standing under the soft morning light, jacket in one hand, coffee in the other, and a heart suddenly fuller than it had been in a long time. She whispered to herself, what just happened? But she already knew that something had changed, not just in her day, but in her life. Asterisk the invitation for the next several days. Mia's routine returned to normal, or at least, it tried to. She woke up early, took the same crowded bus to the hospital, tied her hair in the same messy bun, and slipped into her navy scrubs like she always did. But something had shifted inside her. Ever since that quiet morning with Keanu, her thoughts wandered more often. When she passed the bench near the parking lot, she remembered his words. When she tucked blankets around her patients, she thought about that jacket she'd lent him. And when she paused near the vending machine, she half expected to see him there again, asleep and fragile. But he didn't come back. Not in person. Not yet. On her day off, Mia stayed home. Her tiny apartment overlooked the city skyline, though. The view was often blurred by dust and city fog. She cleaned her space, made tea, and tried to read, but her thoughts kept floating back to that small notebook Keanu had pulled out. She stayed to save others, even after losing the one she loved. Why had that line stayed with her? Because it felt like someone had finally seen her. In the evening, as she folded laundry, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. A message popped up. Hi Mia, it's Keanu. I hope I'm not bothering you. I asked the hospital if they could forward a note, and they kindly helped. I wanted to send you the invitation I mentioned. Attached was a soft image of a printed card. You are invited to Hearts Behind the Hands, a night celebrating nurses, caregivers, and silent heroes, stories, music, connection. Please join us as our guest of honor. Below that, in handwriting, he'd scribbled, bring a story, even a short one. Mia stared at the message for a long time. She wasn't used to being invited to things. She wasn't used to being seen. On the night of the event, she almost didn't go. She'd picked up her old notebook, the one she hadn't touched in years. It was still filled with half-finished poems and patient notes she wrote to herself in between shifts. At the last minute, she grabbed it and slipped it into her bag, just in case. The venue was nothing flashy. It was a community theater hall, simple and quiet, decorated with strings of warm lights and posters of thank you letters from real patients. Families sat with nurses. Children colored hearts on blank sheets. There were no cameras, no red carpets. Just peace. Mia walked in quietly, unsure of where to go. Until she heard someone call her name, Mia. She turned. Keanu was standing by a table of books, dressed simply in a dark jacket and soft jeans. He looked calm, content, even joyful. You came, he said, smiling. I wasn't sure if I should. She replied honestly. I'm glad you did. He led her to a quiet table and offered her a seat. Around them were nurses from other hospitals, doctors, even a few patients with healed scars and warm hearts. Laughter floated through the room like music. And then the lights dimmed. A woman stepped onto the small stage tonight. She said into the mic, "We gather not to praise heroes, but to see them, to listen, to honor not the loudest voices, but the quietest acts of kindness." Mia's chest tightened. The woman continued, "We've asked a few people to share stories tonight. Not rehearsed, not perfect, just real." One by one, people stepped forward. A nurse told how she once stayed with a dying man all night, even though her shift ended hours before. A janitor shared how he found a child crying in a hallway and sat with her until her parents came. A young boy stood with a trembling voice and said, "Thank you to the nurse who held my hand during chemo. I don't know her name, but she made me brave." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Keanu stood next. "There's someone here tonight," he said, his voice deep and quiet, "who gave me something I didn't realize I needed. Her name is Mia, and she reminded me what it feels like to be cared for when no one's watching." The room turned toward her. Mia's heart pounded. "I asked her to bring a story," he said. "Mia, if you feel ready, we'd love to hear it." She stood slowly, legs shaking. She walked to the mic, notebook in hand. "I didn't plan anything," she began softly, "but here's something I wrote last year." She opened the page, cleared her throat. She walked through fire every night, not the kind that burns skin, but the kind that burns silence. She never screamed, never cried. But when the world looked away, she wrapped her hands in hope and kept someone alive with nothing but a whisper. She closed the book. Silence filled the room. Then gentle claps, not loud, not forced, but full of respect. As she stepped down, Keanu met her with a quiet nod. "That was beautiful. I was scared," she admitted. "That's how you know it mattered," he said. After the event, they sat outside under the stars. The cool air touched their skin, but neither moved to leave. "Thank you," Mia said. "For what?" "For remembering, for making space for people like me." Keanu looked at her. "People like you are the reason any of us survive." She smiled. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Mia, would you ever write something with me? Something real, a book? Stories from hospitals, from healers?" She froze. "You want me to write with you?" "You already are," he said. "You just didn't know it yet." And in that moment, under the stars, something new began. Not a fairy tale, not a movie, but something better. Something real. The promise of Pajest. Next morning, Mia woke up early, not because of an alarm, but because her heart was still racing from the night before. Every moment from the event played over in her mind. Keanu's soft voice echoing in front of the crowd, the gentle claps after her poem, and the way he looked at her afterward like he wasn't seeing a nurse, but a writer, a storyteller, someone who mattered beyond scrubs and schedules. She hadn't felt like that in years. The sky outside was still pale when she sat at her kitchen table, notebook open in front of her. She stared at the blank page. Then, slowly, her pen began to move. Words poured out, not forced, not polished, just honest. About the little boy who always asked for a different cartoon bandage. About the elderly man who used to sing old love songs before surgery. About the young girl who wrote "Thank you for my second birthday" on a sticky note and stuck it to me as locker. Hours passed. By noon, her phone buzzed. "Keanu, how's the writing coming along?" Mia smiled. "Mia, messy, but it's real." "Keanu, perfect, let's meet." They agreed on a quiet cafe tucked between a bookstore and a florist his choice. When she arrived, he was already there, wearing a worn sweater and sipping black coffee. No one around seemed to notice him, and he didn't act like anyone special. He waved her over, eyes lighting up. "Brought the notebook?" he asked. She held it up with a grin. They sat for hours, exchanging stories. Keanu shared about a nurse from his childhood who used to sneak him extra orange juice when his mom was in the hospital. He talked about the loneliness of hotel rooms, the numb silence of limos after film premieres, and how much more alive he felt talking to someone real than sitting in a room full of celebrities. "I think the world forgets," he said, "that behind every healed person, there's someone like you, someone who stood quietly beside the pain." Mia listened, then read him one of her new pieces. "A nurse doesn't wear armor, but she walks into battles every day. Her hands don't hold swords, but they lift people from despair. Keanu sat back in his chair, visibly moved. That's what we need in this book, he said. Truth like that. They decided on a name right there on the napkin. Quiet Hands. A book of true stories, poems, and reflections from nurses, janitors, caregivers, and those whose kindness never made headlines. Keanu wanted to use his platform to bring it to life. Mia wanted to make sure it stayed honest and gentle. They made a plan. Keanu would connect with his team, help with publishing, and get voices from all over the country. Mia would write, edit, and collect stories from hospitals. They would meet once a week, always in quiet places where no one looked twice at either of them. Weeks passed. The project grew. A designer offered to help with the cover free of charge. After hearing just one of Mia's poems, a nurse from Kansas sent a voice note about holding the hand of a dying veteran, a young boy now in remission. Mailed a drawing of the nurse who brought him back to life. Mia worked late into the night. After long shifts, her co-workers noticed the glow in her face, the light in her steps. Who's the guy? One of them teased one morning. It's not like that, Mia replied, laughing. He's just someone who sees me. One rainy afternoon, while editing pages near the window of a library, Mia's phone rang. It was Keanu. But his voice was different. Shaky. Double quotes Mia. He said, I didn't want to tell you this way, but my sister, she's taken a turn. She's back in the hospital. It's serious this time. Her heart sank. I'm coming, she said without thinking. You don't have to. I want to. She found him in the same hallway as before, sitting alone. His face was pale, eyes tired. His hand gripped the edge of the bench like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Mia sat beside him. No words, just presence. I don't know what to do, he said softly. You stay. She whispered. You breathe. You believe. He looked at her, tears threatening. How do you stay strong? He asked. I'm not, she replied. I just keep showing up. He nodded, eyes glassy. That night, she stayed with him, brought tea, reminded him to eat, told him old patient stories just to make him laugh. And when visiting hours were over and the nurses dimmed the lights, she covered him with her jacket again. He smiled through the ache. You always do that. You always forget yours, she teased gently. But in her heart, she knew this was something deeper than kindness. It was something forming slowly, like trust, like home. The next morning, the doctor came out with news. Keanu stood, heart pounding. She's stable, the doctor said, responding to treatment, but she'll need time. He exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Thank you, he whispered. Then he turned to Mia. And hugged her, not like a movie star, not like a friend, but like someone who had been saved from drowning. Later that day, as they walked out of the hospital together, Keanu turned to her. You know what you are? He asked. She looked at him, curious. You're the heartbeat in the silence, she smiled. And you're the voice reminding us to listen. They paused outside the doors. The world beyond buzzed as usual. Cars, sirens, people rushing. But between them, time was still. Then he said something she didn't expect. Mia, can I take you somewhere tomorrow? Somewhere quiet, not for the book, just for us? Her breath caught in her chest. Yes, she said. And just like that, another page in their story turned. The quiet Placide. Next day, the sun rose slow and golden over the city. Mia stood in front of her mirror, holding a soft cream scarf in her hands. She wasn't sure why she felt nervous. Maybe it was the way Keanu had looked at her last night. Maybe it was the quiet invitation in his voice. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in a long time, someone was asking her to show up not as a nurse, not as a helper, but as herself. She arrived outside her building at 9 a.m. sharp. His car was already there. Simple, nothing flashy. The windows were rolled down, and he had music playing, something soft, maybe jazz. When he saw her, he stepped out and opened the door for her, a quiet smile on his face. Ready? He asked. She nodded. Where are we going? Somewhere peaceful. They drove for nearly an hour, past the edge of the city, through winding roads and quiet hills. They talked about everything, not just work or the book, but life, fears, dreams. She told him about the time she almost gave up nursing. School. He told her about his childhood, about losing his best friend, about days when fame felt like a prison. The silence between them was never awkward. It was full, like a warm space that didn't need to be filled. Finally, they reached the top of a hill that opened into a wide, grassy field. In the middle stood a single tree, tall and gentle, with a wooden bench beneath it. The view stretched for miles: rolling hills, distant farms, and a sky so open it made you feel small in a good way. "I come here when I need to breathe," Keanu said, stepping out. Mia followed, her eyes wide. "It's beautiful." They sat on the bench in silence. The wind rustled through the leaves. Birds chirped nearby. The whole world felt far away. After a long pause, he spoke. "Mia, do you ever think about what you want outside the hospital?" She thought for a moment. "I used to, but life got loud, and I forgot to dream. Maybe it's time to start again." She turned to him. "And you? What do you want?" He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, he said, "I want peace, not just for me, for the people I care about, for the world." She smiled. "That's a big wish, maybe," he said. "But maybe it starts with small things, like this." He took out his notebook. "Read me something," he asked. She opened hers. He never asked for applause, never stood in the spotlight. But when he gave you his silence, it was louder than any cheer. Keanu was quiet for a moment. Then, he looked at her, eyes full. "That's about me?" he asked. She nodded. "That's the kindest thing anyone's ever written for me." She closed the book. "It's true." A sudden gust of wind swept through the field, making her scarf fly loose. He caught it before it hit the ground. "I've got you," he said, handing it back. She held it, her heart beating fast. "Keanu," she whispered. "Why me? Why did you let me into this part of your life?" He didn't blink. "Because you didn't ask anything from me. You just gave. And it wasn't about who I was. It was about who you are." Her breath caught. And then, without planning it, he reached for her hand. Not to hold. Just to feel. Her fingers didn't pull away. They sat like that, side by side, hands barely touching, but hearts wide open. A week later, the first draft of their book was finished. Quiet Hands was filled with stories from real people, not just Mia's, but nurses from Chicago, caregivers from Texas, even a teenage girl who helped her neighbor walk again. Every story was gentle, raw, beautiful. Keanu's single quotes as publisher loved it. But he had one condition. "Mia's name goes first," Keanu said during the meeting. "What?" she gasped. "Why?" "Because you built this," he said. "I just helped carry it." She wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't ego. It was truth, and she knew it. On the night before the book's release, Keanu called her. "Mia, there's something I haven't told you." She sat up in bed. "What is it?" "My sister. She's recovering, slowly, and she read your poem." She cried. Then she asked me if the girl who wrote it was the one who saved me. Mia was silent. I told her yes. Keanu continued. She smiled and said, "Then keep her close." There was a pause. "Mia," he said, "I know we started this as a project, and I know I'm not the best at feelings, but I care about you more than I can explain." Mia didn't speak right away, but when she did, her voice trembled. "I care about you too," he exhaled. "So, after the launch," he asked gently, "can we go back to that bench? Just us, no notebooks, no plans. Just the wind and the sky, yes." She whispered. And in that moment, miles apart, to people who had once been strangers felt like home. The bench beneath the scythe day of the book launch arrived like sunlight after a storm, soft, golden, and full of promise. Mia stood outside the event hall in a simple light blue dress. She had never been to anything like this before. The banners outside read "Quiet Hands," stories of silent strength in soft handwritten font. Beneath it, two names were printed: Mia Thomas and Keanu Reeves. She stared at it for a long time, her heart pounding with disbelief. Inside, the place was filled but quiet. No loud flashes, no paparazzi, no screaming fans. It wasn't about fame. It was about people. Families, nurses, janitors, patients who had found strength in silence. There were flowers, handwritten cards, and a wall where readers could post sticky notes with their own short stories. Mia walked slowly past it, reading words from strangers. My father never spoke much, but one night, he stayed awake just to hold my hand after my surgery. A nurse sang to my baby when I was too tired to speak. I never got her name. I was going to give up. Then a stranger left me a sandwich. That was enough. These were the stories no one told on the news, the stories no one made movies about. But here they were, honored, remembered, alive. Keanu found her near the back of the room, standing quietly. You okay? He asked. I'm overwhelmed, she admitted. Me, too, he said. Then, without warning, he pulled a small object from his pocket. A folded piece of paper. What's that? She asked. He handed it to her. For Mia. Not because she saved my life, but because she reminded me why it's worth saving. Her eyes welled up. You wrote that? I meant every word. They stepped onto the small stage together. Not to perform, but to say thank you. This book, Mia said softly into the mic, isn't about heroes. It's about humans. It's about those moments that happen when no one's watching. The jacket, the warm tea, the quiet whisper in the hallway. This is for you. All of you. The crowd stood in silence. Then, one by one, they began to clap. Not for fame. Not for names. But for kindness. Hours later, when the hall had emptied and the lights dimmed, Keanu met her outside. You ready? He asked. She smiled. For what? The bench. They drove in silence again. Not because they had nothing to say, but because some feelings live better in silence. The city faded behind them. The hills rose gently, and finally, they arrived at the field, the tree still strong, the bench still waiting. They sat beside each other as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. You know, Mia said, this all started with a jacket. Keanu laughed gently, and a kind heart. She looked at him. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't fallen asleep that night? He nodded. All the time. But I think, maybe I was meant to. They sat quietly. Again. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out something new. A ring box. She froze. He opened it. Inside was no ring. Just a tiny silver pin. A heart, wrapped into hands. I saw this in a little shop downtown, he said. The woman said it meant care in silence. I thought it was you. She took it gently, her hands shaking. Thank you, she whispered. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. Mia, he said softly, I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to keep writing it with you. Not just in books, in real life, in mornings, in benches, in little moments. Tears welled in her eyes. Me too. The wind brushed past them. The stars blinked to life. And there, beneath, the open sky, a nurse who gave without asking, and an actor who longed to be seen sat side by side, not as healer and patient, not as famous and forgotten, but as to hearts that found each other in the quiet. Months later, Quiet Hands became a national bestseller. Schools taught it. Hospitals framed its quotes on their walls. But Mia and Keanu never cared about the sales. They cared about the letters that came in, stories from people who finally felt seen. And every year, on the anniversary of that jacket moment, they visited the same bench. They never brought cameras, just coffee. And each other, because sometimes the greatest stories are written not in headlines or scripts, but in quiet acts of love that no one expects.